Hello, everybody. Today we're talking about nothing. Of course, we can't actually talk about nothing. We'll get into that later. And we're also going to be answering the question, why is there something rather than nothing? So, this question is one of the most ancient questions. And I don't think it actually makes sense. I'll explain why in a sec. But the religious seem to think they have a monopoly on this question, and their answer is God. Let's look at a quick clip about somebody explaining this view.
Why is there something rather than nothing? Alan Sandage, the brilliant cosmologist who became a Christian in his 50s, said God is the answer to that question. But people are now so desperate to show that the universe created itself from nothing, which seems to me to be an immediate oxymoron. If I say X created Y, I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of Y. If I say X created X, I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of X, which simply shows that nonsense remains nonsense even if high-powered scientists utter it.
Okay, so it says, well, we need God. And it gives the credence of a physicist that later in life accepted this fact, as he would say. But okay, to take his example, that if you say X created Y, you're assuming the existence of X. And if you're saying that X created X, well, you're assuming that X created itself. Well, X is God in this case, in his argument. So it's not really explaining much, saying that the universe needs a creator. And you say, well, that's why you need God. Well, then why doesn't the creator need a creator? Say, well, it doesn't. Well, you could skip a step and just say that the universe exists on its own, or say that you don't know why. Just giving the extra step of saying it's God, it might make logical sense to you, but it really answers nothing. But then to go a step further and say that, well, just because there has to be a God and this God cares about you and designed the whole universe with you in mind and cares about what you eat and who you sleep with and what you say and so forth, makes no logical sense. Let's continue this clip.
It reminds me a little bit of G.K. Chesterton, who said, "It is absurd to complain that it is unthinkable for an unthinkable God to make everything out of nothing, and then to pretend that it is more thinkable that nothing should turn itself into everything."
Okay, that last part was a little bit convoluted. But okay, so essentially he's saying that people are saying that nothing created everything. Well, that makes no sense because nothing cannot exist. Just the fact of thinking about nothing, we're thinking about something. Let's go back to Aristotle here. He talked about this, and in other terms, he basically reasoned that nothing is what rocks think about, meaning that rocks lack thinking about anything, and that is nothing. It can't exist. He also had this other phrase, that nature abhors a vacuum, which later got translated into horror vacui, which has implications outside of just physics. In art, for instance, it says that the space must be filled with something, which is true. Space, there is no nothing. For instance, early modern science, with Galileo and Newton and such, it was thought that they disproved Aristotle, that empty space exists, the void, the vacuum. But actually, with modern quantum mechanics, they have showed that actually nothing can't exist, that in the space, the void that we consider as empty or as being nothing, it's actually a lot of things. It's the fluctuations, the quantum waves and energy vibrations, however you want to say it. I'm not a physicist, so forgive me here. And I know that Lawrence Krauss, the physicist, astrophysicist, has also talked about this idea that nothing is actually creating everything. He's not talking about nothing, because of course that you can't. But he's talking about this sort of empty space where it seems like there's nothing, that the particles are and the fluctuations are coming out of this, so that they're actually in empty space, it is still something. So yeah, getting back to the question of why there is nothing, or why there is something rather than nothing. To answer the question why, it's simply like, well, I don't know, but I know that in order to talk about this question, there has to be something, and there can't be nothing. Nothing can't exist, only existence exists. So if we go back, though, to the beginning of the Big Bang, which is the first moments of existence as we understand it, they say, well, what happened before the beginning? Well, that is a nonsense question, because you're saying what existed when nothing existed. Well, we can't talk about this. We can only talk about what exists. In the same sense that, like for instance, evolution, evolution is only talking about what happened when life happened. Like, how did life evolve? It says nothing about how life was created. In the same way that the Big Bang says nothing about how existence was created, it just describes how it unfolded once it did exist. Another example is to say, what is north of the North Pole? Well, you can all. It seems like you can always go north, but once you get max north, you cannot go any farther north. This is it's a nonsense question to say what's north of the North Pole. Nothing is north of the North Pole. In the same sense, like what existed before existence existed is a nonsense question. And it doesn't mean that just because we can't go north of the North Pole, it doesn't mean that our cardinalities are useless or meaningless or anything. They still exist. North, south, east, and west exist. But if you're max north, only south exists. In the same sense, if you're at the beginning of time, there is nothing before the beginning. And again, to say that there was a sort of uncaused cause, or causa sui, a prime mover, God, and you say that this is needed logically, well, it doesn't really answer much. Aristotle said that this unmoved mover, the prime mover, is existence itself. Well, we could skip a step and just say that existence is existence itself. And again, to say that just because we need this logically, which I disagree with, but even if you think that you need this God or prime mover, it is to say nothing about the mind of this thing. Aristotle didn't presume as much at all. This is completely illogical. So nothing can't exist. There's always something. We're always talking about something. So this has been me actually thinking. If you think I was doing a bad job, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.